Hello, welcome to a spooky special edition of Geek Lunch Meat. I'm your host as usual, Chris. This time out, as we're approaching Halloween, I thought we'd take a look at some of the scary and spooky things that have given me the willies over the years. Ghosts and ghoulies and witches and all that. It's got some films, some books, some comics. Just general stuff. Maybe like a stream of consciousness probably coming at you as I randomly think of things. But yeah, so let's start. We'll go straight on top of the pile. Reanimator, classic 80s Stuart Gordon gore fest, based on the works of H.P. Lovecraft. Absolutely love this. During the 80s, gore was what it was all about. Absolutely loved. So Jeffrey Combs is in it, a stalwart of horror of all that sort of time period. Still a genre icon now, still performing in stuff. But yeah, I would definitely recommend Herbert West doing experiments on the dead to bring them back to life with horrifying consequences. So yeah, if you like your sort of 80s gore, this is the American version. Back in the day, everything was cut over here in the UK, and this was this in particular was no exception. And yeah, this is the American DVD I had to import. I think nowadays you can probably get it uncut over here, much more lax on stuff. But yeah, absolutely love that one. So yeah, give that a go if you've not seen it. If you have seen it, watch it again because it's great. What else we got? Hellraiser. Everyone knows Hellraiser. There is a reboot coming shortly, I believe, that Clive Barker is involved in with a female Pinhead. Based on the novella The Hellbound Heart, again, 80s sort of gore, but also very sort of disturbing. Yeah, Clive Barker has that knack for sort of getting under your skin and just making things uncomfortable. There have been numerous sequels. The second one, Hellbound, wasn't it? I think is also very good. I probably do prefer that to the first one. Actually, it's got more of a story to it. The third one's all right. They then start running down a bit from there, as a lot of these horror franchises do. But yeah, Hellraiser, always a good one to go back to. Nightbreed, based on Clive Barker's Cabal book, is another one. You can get it in various different director's cuts now. I remember being massively excited for it as a kid when it came out, and I loved it back then. I rewatched it recently. It doesn't massively hold up, which is a shame. There's some good effects work in it. It's ripe for a TV show. I know there were rumours that they were going to be working on that. The story of the Nightbreed sort of scattered across America, trying to sort of stay hidden. I think would really work as a TV show. So yeah, hopefully they'll go for that. But that's Hellraiser. Slightly more modern film, The Babadook, from Australian director Jennifer Kent. I really enjoyed this, about a freaky kid's storybook that mysteriously turns up at a house. Shenanigans occur from there. Points you think, especially as a parent myself, there's bits where you sort of, it's quite disturbing because you think what it sort of depicts what it would be like to maybe have a kid who you think is actually a bit of a psychopath, and maybe there is something like really, really wrong with them and they're dangerous. And then it sort of seesaws, and you then get the feeling, well, hang on a sec, no, maybe this kid is completely normal. Maybe it's the mother. Very effective. I really enjoyed that. Jennifer Kent also did a film called The Nightingale, which is currently on Netflix. You can watch. It's not a horror film as such, but it is set when the English came over to Australia. And it is quite disturbing. It's a revenge tale. Reminded me of was it The Proposition, the Nick Cave movie that he wrote. Very similar to that. It's a lot. It is quite disturbing and very sad. So not a horror film as such, but very unsettling as well, and very good. So that's on Netflix. But yeah, The Babadook, that is good as well. That there's some good creepy stuff going on in there. Give that one a go if you haven't. We're going old school again. Poltergeist. Absolutely love Poltergeist. Directed supposedly by Toby Hooper, who brought us Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Life Force, among other things. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'd be a bit of a heretic here, but it doesn't do a lot for me. I think the problem is, it was banned in the UK and you couldn't get it. and then I didn't see it until I was about 17, by which point it had sort of been built up in my head. And then obviously we were watching, say, all the big sort of 80s gore movies by then. And then when you actually watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre, yeah, it's got great atmosphere, but I think I was probably expecting, you know, a massacre with a chainsaw, not surprisingly, and you don't really get none of that. And so and the feeling, obviously, where it's you know, very low budget, the way it's shot, it is quite creepy, but didn't give me what I wanted from it. So I suppose had I seen it when it originally came out, and sort of grown up with it, I can see why it would be the classic. Obviously, a lot of people absolutely love it. But for me, yeah, V didn't do much. But then I digress. Back to Poltergeist. Tobe Hooper. Yeah. Apparently, he probably didn't direct very much of it at all. It does not feel like a Tobe Hooper film. You watch it, and it doesn't feel like anything else he's done. It does, however, feel incredibly like a 1980s Steven Spielberg movie. Spielberg produced it. Apparently, he was on set all the time. And I've read interviews with some of the cast who say that they were only ever directed by Steven Spielberg, and that Tobe Hooper was not there. I think there were sort of, I know, alcohol, substance abuse problems he may have had back then as well. But yeah, it absolutely reeks of Steven Spielberg. That whole, you know, the way it's filmed, it's those Amblin movies of the 80s, you know, like E.T., it's the Goonies, all very that similar vibe, but obviously with the poltergeists coming for the girl out of the TV. There is a remake. Never seen it. I hear it's garbage, and I imagine it is. Why? It's an absolute classic. Don't need to remake it. So yeah, Poltergeist. Check that out if you haven't already. Brain Dead. Back when Peter Jackson was a low-budget filmmaker, and all of his movies weren't 5 million hours long, and he was in desperate need of an editor, he made Brain Dead. Absolutely love it. It was given to me on a bootlegged VHS video cassette back then. Me and my friends watched the hell out of it. It was like nothing. I think it was just handed me and said, watch this. It's like nothing you've ever seen. At the top, probably the most goriest film. I mean, it's hilariously funny. But yeah, just probably one of the most goriest films that you're ever likely to see. But it is incredibly well made. It's not surprising that Peter Jackson went on to become the success he did, because as well as it being, you could just write it off as a gory horror comedy, but it's incredibly well written, incredibly well shot. The story's great, the script is great. The lawnmower battle at the end with body parts flying everywhere, gallons of blood. Absolutely loved it at the time, still love it. Again, pretty similar. This is a Spanish DVD, because at the time that was the only way you could get hold of it. I'm sure you can get hold of it easily in this country now, but yeah, Brain Dead, go with that. Closely followed by The Frighteners, Peter Jackson's first sort of foray into big budget film making with Michael J. Fox. Jeffrey Combs pops up again from Reanimator as a absolutely demented, he's like an FBI agent. Yeah, Michael J. Fox plays a guy who can contact the dead. Again, like Brain Dead, it's a great horror. It's a comedy. It's incredibly well directed, incredibly well written. And again, not surprising that Peter Jackson went on to do what he did. I wish he'd go back to his roots in a way. Obviously, some of his later films, especially the Hobbit trilogy, too long. Just far too much going on. Don't need to be that long. Go back to do some of this, Peter, if you're watching. I'm sure you're not. Let's go. Let's do a couple of books. Meddling Kids by Edgar Cantero is it would be, you could write it off as a Scooby-Doo spoof, but it's more than that. It is hilarious. It is adults who have grown up, who had a sort of club when they were kids with their dog, very Scooby-Doo, solving mysteries and things, and now they're all adults and they're all very much fucked up, and their lives have not gone the way they should do, or they hoped they would. And they get back together again, and are forced to solve another mystery with some monsters in a house on a lake. Brilliant, absolutely hilarious. I've never heard of anything else that Edgar Cantero has done, but yeah, it's very meta in places. There are sort of jokes that break the fourth wall of a book, if that's possible, and sort of address the reader directly and refer to the writing and stuff that will happen sort of paragraphs later. Yeah, Meddling Kids. Give that one a go. David Wong's John Dies at the End. You've got John Dies at the End, followed by This Book is Full of Spiders, followed by What the Hell Did I Just Read? David Wong is a pseudonym of Jason Pargin, and they are just about to be re-released under his original name if they're not out already. John Dies at the End, made into a film by Don Coscarelli of Beastmaster fame and Phantasm, that I'll get onto in a little bit. The film's pretty good for a low budget movie. It sort of captures the first half of the film, captures the book quite well. They obviously didn't have the budget to do the whole thing. It sort of tapers off towards the end a bit, but that's worth checking out. It was on Amazon. Not sure if it's still there on Amazon Prime, but you can get it quite cheap at any rate. Yeah, these are great. The second one, This Book is Full of Spiders, is it's in one page it can go from being hilarious to horrifying and then back to hilarious again. Very, very clever writing about, I mean, they meander all over the place. There's some cosmic horror stuff. There's a talking dog in the first one. I say that obviously the second one's got loads of spiders in it. So there's things invading our world from parallel universes, and two guys that are basically trying to stop it from happening with varying results. Yeah, these are absolutely brilliant. There is another one coming short. Well, I say shortly. I think it's coming out in probably towards the end of next year. That he's just, I think he said on Facebook that he's just finished. So yeah, there'll be more of those. So yeah, let's say John Dies at the End. This Book is Full of Spiders. And What the Hell Did I Just Read? All great titles. So yeah, check those out. Running out of room here. Let's put those down there. Wouldn't be a look at horror without some Stephen King, my favourite author. Loved his stuff since I was a kid. It has obviously been translated into numerous different movies, mostly with sort of middling results. The standouts being probably his sort of non-horror stuff. Obviously, Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile are probably two of the best ones from Frank Darabont. Though obviously, they're not particularly horror based. But some of these, the better later stuff, I would go with It, Chapter 1. Chapter 2 is okay, but I think this is a really good adaptation of the film. And I think it's the same as with the old TV miniseries with Tim Curry, in that basically the story is better with the kids. It's the same in the book, and I think that's what Chapter 2 of this suffers from. It's just when they're adults, this is not as interesting. But this version, this part, where they're kids, I mean, everyone knows the story. Pennywise the clown, living in Derry, terrorizing people, and the kids band together to get rid of him. And they think they've stopped him, and he comes back, and they have to, when they're adults, and they have to go back to stop him again. But yeah, part 1 is absolutely fantastic. The kids are all great in it. It's really well directed. I really enjoyed it. So it's one of my favourite books as well. Read it at an impressionable age. It's really stuck with me. I suppose obviously again with the story being about kids, when you read it when you are young, it sticks with you. But yeah, I also really enjoyed Doctor Sleep, the follow-up to The Shining. I really enjoyed the book, and then the film is very clever because it takes the book and the film and sort of melds them together. King sort of famously doesn't like Stanley Kubrick's film. I know obviously everyone else considers it a classic. You can sort of see it's not his story. Kubrick changed quite a bit of it. So King's not a massive fan. So when he wrote Doctor Sleep, the book, it follows on obviously from the Shining novel. So it's got a different story. Now, this film version takes elements from both. I think they acknowledge the fact that the film was the version that people would know mainly. So it's a direct sequel to the film, but then uses a lot of cues that they didn't use from the book in the original adaptation, and stick them in here, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's a sort of mishmash, and I think it works really well. Ewan McGregor was great. Yeah, I think that's one of the better King adaptations, definitely. David Cronenberg's remake of The Fly. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Cronenberg, I mean, it could have included any one of his films. Say none of these are in any particular order, or say just randomness. Jeff Goldblum's probably never been better. He's a sort of peak Goldblum in this. Gina Davis puts in a fantastic performance. The the effects are absolutely brilliant. I mean, we can all lament makeup work not being, CGI having taken over. You always say delve back into classics like this and watch people's body parts falling off and pus and stuff in general. Yeah, absolutely love it. Obviously, story, everyone knows the story. He invents teleportation, and there's a fly in the teleporting pod when he moves, which causes all sorts of problems. So yeah, fly, brilliant. Obviously, we can let Halloween pass by without looking at Halloween itself. The original was still the best for me. All of the many sequels, and obviously you've got Halloween Kills in the cinema at the moment. But for me, you only need the one, and after that, it's all become a bit redundant. Like a lot of the sort of Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and all of those type of things. I'd say sort of dragged themselves on during the 80s into the 90s, and say even up to where they've all mostly been rebooted in modern. But yeah, I mean, Halloween, it was the original slasher. Often imitated, never sort of bettered in my eyes. John Carpenter back in the day when he was, just on an absolute, winning streak. The Fog is also great. Obviously, The Thing. We've got Escape from New York, Big Trouble in Little China. The Man Could Do No Wrong back then. Obviously, Michael Myers terrorizing. Jamie Lee Curtis. Obviously, the Scream movies sort of build their whole premise really on paying homage to this sort of style of film. The slasher movies of the 80s, say, which became big business, but that was the first one, but not bettered in my opinion. A random one, but I quite enjoy it. Final Destination 2. The Final Destination movies, I mean, they're not particularly all that great. They don't have much of a story. But this one, particularly for me, has some great deaths. If you just want to watch a bunch of teens get killed in gory ways, this one's great. It's like watching, if you're in the UK, you'll be familiar with the TV show Casualty, where you spend sort of the first 5-10 minutes of the show just sort of wondering who's going to end up in a hospital as people go around, climbing up ladders and doing various different things around the house, wondering how the accidents are going to happen, which is exactly what Final Destination 2 is. You have a big there's a big disaster at the beginning of the films. So the first one's a plane, this one's a freeway pile-up, third one's a roller coaster. And then, you get a great big massive amount of carnage, and then someone stops it from happening because they've had a vision of it, and then death comes back to pick them all off during the movie. But yeah, just some of the deaths in this, people being squashed, and again, going back to the point I made before, old school gore. There's nothing like watching someone's head, get crushed in a fountain of blood, brains squirting everywhere. So Final Destination. I'm not going to sort of lie and make out they're sort of classic horror movies, but as they go, I like the second one. You don't really need to watch any of the others. This one's probably got the most amount of story in it. Final Destination 2. So going back to Don Coscarelli, as I mentioned before, he made The Beastmaster, which is my all-time favourite films. I think the first film I ever watched on a Betamax video back in the day. He made the Phantasm movies. You can get them, if you can get them in this lovely, shiny box set. A bit like Final Destination 2, I like the second one the best one. It's probably the most similar to sort of Army of Darkness and the Evil Dead movies in that sort of comedy vibe mixed in. But the first one, very low budget. Second one obviously had a bit of a bigger budget, with these shiny orbs going around, screwing into people's heads and blood squirting everywhere. The creepy tall man and his sort of plan. You can never work out his plan because it seems to, from film to film, things seem to change. There's not a massive amount of continuity. And you've got Reg, I think, who started off as an ice cream man, and then he ends up with this sort of quadruple barreled sawn off shotgun. All good fun. They sort of say 2's the best, 3's okay. They sort of tail off a bit after that. But Phantasm classics. Don Coscarelli also made the film of Bubba Ho-Tep with Bruce Campbell as an elderly Elvis fighting a mummy in a retirement home, which is as bizarre and as amazing as it sounds. And if you've not seen it, I would give that a go, based on the book by Joe R. Lansdale, whose books I would recommend as well. He also wrote some books you can get in a collected volume about the drive-in, about some people that get trapped in a drive-in cinema. And within I don't know, within days, people have resorted to sort of cannibalism and eating babies and all sorts of disgusting stuff. A lot of Joel Lansdale stuff, like the Hap and Leonard books he wrote, which also made into a TV show, are much more sort of grounded in reality, and he writes a lot about where he lives in America, sort of during the Depression and that sort of era. But yeah, then occasionally he comes out with these absolute gems of sort of comedy, horror, just weirdness. Yeah, absolutely love him to death. Absolute classic. We'll go on to The Evil Dead. I'll be careful with this. This is my collector's version of the original Evil Dead that came in this latex replica of the Book of the Dead. And there's a lesson to be learned. People manufacturing these things, this is latex. Latex degrades over time. This has already got cracks showing up in it, and this has gone quite hard in places. It also stinks, so it probably stinks like human flesh, to be honest. So yeah, Evil Dead, absolutely love. I must admit, I prefer the second one. This one coming in a nice shiny tin, which obviously was much better for non-degrading purposes. That to me, that's where it's more of a remake of the first one with lots more added comedy, and then they went on and then did Army of Darkness, which by then has sort of lost a lot of the horror elements completely and become a sort of Ray Harryhausen fantasy and very funny. And then there is the TV show Ash versus Evil Dead, 3 seasons of which are currently on Netflix. Yeah, Bruce Campbell is an absolute hero of mine. He's absolutely brilliant in these. Again, a bit like Peter Jackson, it's no surprising that Sam Raimi went on to become a big Hollywood director because the style he's got in these films is unlike anything. I mean, the second one, the amount of blood flying across the screen as well. There was the remake of the first one with Jane Levy a few years back, which actually isn't too bad. It's more like the style, say, of the first one. They lose a lot of the comedy, and it's much more of a straightforward horror film. And then we've got Evil Dead Rises, which I believe he tweeted they've just finished filming yesterday, I think. So that'll be coming to us, I'm guessing, probably for next Halloween, I would have thought, if they've got any sense in the marketing. So yeah, there's still more Evil Dead coming at us. There's a new video game coming out shortly as well. So yeah, this has been rolling on since the early 80s. No sign of stopping. A couple more books I love. Chuck Palahniuk, who did Fight Club, most famous for, I think I've pronounced his name right. He does some very strange and weird stuff as well. Lullaby, I really like. It starts off as a story with like a journalist investigating a spate of cock death, where he then sort of discovers that there's this like a poem in a book, which is almost like a spell that puts people to sleep, which is responsible for it. And it goes on from there, and sort of goes places that you don't expect it to, and becomes more of a, especially for Palahniuk, more of a straightforward or sort of fantasy novel in a way. But that one I really like. Haunted is a collection of short stories, sort of tenuously held together by a group of writers who have all been invited to stay in this big theatre away from everyone as a sort of writer's retreat. Yeah, there's just some freaky stuff going on, all types of different short story, some very strange people. There's one called, I think it's called Guts, which is quite a disturbing story, and there's a lot of very weird stuff going on. And then Snuff is not a horror as such. It's about some people making a pornographic movie. It joins the sort of ranks of only a few books that have ever made me feel quite uncomfortable reading them. Parts of Stephen King's Gerald's Game, when she's cutting the skins, coming degloving, they call it, when the skins slowly, when he describes these skins slowly peeling off her hands. I think bits of James Herbert's Rats originally as well, also quite creepy. But yeah, Snuff is not a horror, and definitely not a book for everyone. But yeah, if you want to be disturbed and just sort of feel, you read it, you feel a bit dirty. Yeah, good stuff. Anyway, it is good stuff. Not one for the grannies out there. Beasts of Burden is a comic series which comes out periodically. in various different volumes about some. It's about cats and dogs mainly that protect the town of Burden's Hill, I think it's called. They, but they've got magic powers. They're sort of like witches and warlocks, but they just happen to be animals, and it sounds really cutesy, and bits of it are obviously they're cats and dogs. There's other animals involved. Obviously, it's all they are very cute. But some of the stuff they get up to when fighting off various demons and things, there is a short story in one of the collections with a kid who's not all there, shall we say, and is drowning puppy. I think you might be drowning puppies at one point. It seems kind of memory. And the way that story ends and the final image is very, very freaky and disturbing for a comic book. It stayed with me for a long time after reading that. But yeah, Beast of Burden would make a brilliant show. Either animated would be good, or even live action and CG the animals in. But either way, yeah, Netflix or someone should get on that. I think will be absolutely excellent. Hellboy, I have to mention this Sea Destruction, the first volume, collecting the first issues. There have been the films from Guillermo del Toro, and then the later one that we don't really talk about. Although technically, that one's the story of that follows the story of the comics a bit more. It just the tone and seems to be all over the place, and a lot of the CGI effects and stuff don't even appear to be finished, which is quite strange. But the original comics, yeah, absolutely fantastic, and it's incredible when if you go back and read them all now. The storyline is there, and it runs through and goes into the BPRD comics, the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense, and becomes a massive, epic tale of the apocalypse, the end of the world, and all these people variously fighting to try and stop it happening. It builds up into one massive epic story. So I recommend you can get Hellboy and the BPRD. There's all the different volumes of the comics. They've been collected and put into paperbacks for your reading pleasure. I definitely check those out. I'm gonna finish off. Dawn of the Dead, Romero's classic. Still one of the greatest zombie movies ever made. Obviously a follow on for Night of the Living Dead, and then we got Day of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead is still my favourite. It's got the most satire and sort of telling about the human condition and consumerism as everyone gets holed up in a shopping mall. There was the remake from Zack Snyder, which is also absolutely good, brilliant as well. Much better than any reason that we thought it would be when it was announced. But yeah, that's a good gory. It's really well directed. Sort of, I like to say Zack's earlier stuff. Much prefer to his later big Warner Brothers superhero shenanigans. But I think it was written by James Gunn, who obviously went on to do Guardians of the Galaxy. So it just goes to show you when you get some talents together like that, good things can happen. So these are just a few horror-related things that I've enjoyed over the years. Hope you've enjoyed watching. Hit like and subscribe if you could. That would be absolutely fantastic. I'll be back Sunday with the usual news and reviews from the week. So until then, take care, eat geek, and be scary.